Hey everybody, this is Cameron from Noxious Anonymous. Today I'm once again joined by Joel Bocko. You know him from Lost in the Movies, as well as his YouTube Twin Peaks series, Journey Through Twin Peaks. And he's also an editor at Twin Peaks Worldwide, so it's great to have him back. How's it going, Joel?
It's going mostly well, but obviously unfortunate occasion, that we're sort of talking about now with Catherine Coulson and everything.
Now, before we discuss anything
Sure.
that has any relevance to the new Twin Peaks series, just want to let everybody know, I'm sure you've seen your Facebook feeds by now, and that is Catherine E. Coulson, the woman who played the Log Lady, has passed away today. Jennifer Lynch issued a statement earlier, and of course, the internet being what it is, and the conspiracy nuts the way they are, didn't believe it until Variety confirmed it. But it is true, Catherine E. Coulson has passed away, and that is incredibly sad on a multitude of levels. She actually did one of her last interviews with Obnoxious Anonymous just a few months ago, actually, and she was really excited about shooting the new Twin Peaks, and at this moment, I don't even know if she has shot any of her scenes. Maybe we'll can find out some information about that as the podcast goes on. But I don't think that she probably completed her performance. I could be wrong. I'm not there on the set, but it just seems so early in the production schedule that I would be amazed if she actually completed her scenes. This, of course, bums me out because obviously the Log Lady is such an essential part to the mythology of Twin Peaks, and obviously she had the tattoos, and obviously in order to get Agent Cooper out of the Black Lodge, there are a few people that, in my opinion, are essential to that, and that is the Log Lady, Hawk, and Ronette Pulaski. I think those are the three that they need to get Agent Cooper out of the Black Lodge. Now, I am speaking totally selfishly right now, and I understand that. Please understand that I also just found out about this news about an hour or two ago, so I'm a little, just flabbergasted because obviously we're not expecting this kind of thing to happen. It's always a tragedy when it does. So she was an amazing woman. Everybody who ever came in contact with her just, has nothing but positive, amazing things to say about her. Like I said, when I spoke with her, she was incredible, very down to earth, very just, one of those people that you talk to for 10 seconds and you already feel like she's one of your closest friends. I mean, she was incredible. That being said, this really, really breaks my heart for the new Twin Peaks. And obviously, I don't know how much of the script they're going to have to change. I don't know how many scenes she has actually shot. I don't know, Joel, help me out here, because I'm trying not to say anything that's too outrageous, but do you understand where I'm coming from? Like, I'm really sad, obviously, for her loss in general, obviously. Mm-hmm. But me being a Twin Peaks fan as well, I can't help but worry about where do we go from here.
I guess to sound sort of an optimistic counterpoint, there have been rumors that she was around on set, and I kind of have a feel. I mean, we don't really know the circumstances of her death, if it was an illness or if she kind of knew this was coming. I have a feeling her being as close to Lynch as she was, that they may have worked something out between them, and I would guess that probably something either was changed in the script, or how would I put it, or between them, or something that allowed her to be sort of a part of this almost as a farewell. And that's kind of, and my thing is, I think, who knows what role she played. They were planning for her to play originally, because it has been in the works for several years at this point. But I think even just a scene or two with her in the new series, and purely, as much as I'd love to see her personally, but purely for like Lynch's sake and her sake, almost to say goodbye to one another, I think that would be really poignant, and I don't know, I have a feeling, just a gut feeling, something like that probably took place somehow. If this was something that was known about, and I don't know, maybe this was something sudden and totally unexpected. Certainly, I don't think there were rumors of her not being in good health or anything. So maybe that's wrong. But it just seems like Lynch has that kind of sweet spot with the universe, and she probably did too. And I hope for both of their sakes they were able to sort of have a valedictory scene, and that'll just be really beautiful if that ends up being a new series. So I hope, and we'll see, I guess.
Well, Jennifer Lynch, this was her statement
Sure.
that she posted on Facebook. She said,
Okay, good, yeah.
"Very sad to hear that Catherine E. Coulson passed away today. That was one hell of a spectacular woman. I'm grateful to have been a part of her life." Now, when you see a statement like that on Facebook, there's no way that this is a joke.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. Definitely, it's pretty clear cut.
So, like I said, this kind of stuff always worries me, and I'm speaking selfishly as a movie and a TV fan, so please excuse me if I'm not trying to offend anybody. But, if they had wrapped this Twin Peaks, right, and Catherine Coulson died, I'd be like, oh my God, that's so sad, that's so tragic, it's upsetting. But whenever things and people die, in the middle of production, especially when I'm assuming they play a key role, you have to wonder, what, how much change of the screenplay are they going to have to alter?
Yeah.
And that's what concerns me. Because, I don't think, and again, I haven't seen the script, so I don't know. I could just be talking out of my ass here. But I don't think that they gave her, a 1 or 2 scene like in Fire Walk with Me. I think that she was going to play throughout the series because, she may have started up as a little caricature in the first season, but as the show went on, the importance of her role grew more and more with each passing episode.
I think the importance of it grew, but the screen time was always kind of limited. You know what I mean?
Right.
There wasn't, and even in Lynch's episodes, because he would always bring her back. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think she's in all of his episodes except maybe, is she in episode 2?
Yeah.
I don't think she is. She is? What is she in? Where is she in that one?
Oh, you're talking about the Dream episode?
Yeah, his episode, the one he directed. I feel like that might be the only one that she's not in.
Yeah, you're right. She is.
Okay, yeah, because she's in the pilot, she's in the season 2 premiere, she's in the one where the next one she tells Major Briggs, and then she brings Cooper to the roadhouse in the killer reveal, and then
she brings the oil in the last episode.
Yeah, she brings the oil in the finale. So obviously he loved to bring her back, but it was usually just for, I almost want to say, one scene in each one. So it was that kind of thing where it's the eye of the duck. That's the perfect term for it. It was that absolutely crucial moment where she comes forward and she's almost like the soul of the being. But it was always sort of limited. So I think, I feel like she was probably planned for more than they shot because they've only been shooting 3 or 4 weeks. So unless they had a really secret arrangement, which I feel like it would have leaked somehow, but Lynch went to where she was, which I guess would be Oregon, and arranged to shoot something quietly, a scene with her and Kyle MacLachlan or something like that, and who knows, but unless there was something like that, they probably did have to limit her role, or will have to if this was totally unexpected. They probably will have to limit the role from what was planned, but I have a feeling that it wasn't like she was in a dozen scenes in every episode or something like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I know. I know they weren't probably shooting action set pieces with her and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I just assumed that she would play a pretty big role in terms of getting him out of the lodge, if that is indeed where they're going with it. You
Well,
know,
it's kind of sad in a way that, aside from just being sad that people have passed away and over the years and everything like that, it seems like all of the people who have died are related somehow to like the lodge or to the sort of supernatural side of the show. You've got Frank Silva, and then you have Don Davis,
mm-hmm.
And now you have Catherine Coulson, and I guess the room service waiter too certainly is not with us anymore. So yeah, it's just strange. It's like a lot of those people who you would think would have sort of been Cooper's direct allies or enemies in that struggle are now gone. So it's sort of sobering.
And I'll take it even a step further. We've now lost Catherine Nicholson, and 20 years ago we lost Jack Nance.
Yep.
We are, and of course they were married.
Lynch touchstones.
Right, and I mean, and those two were married for a brief period of time.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's kind of like the end of Eraserhead as well. And Catherine Nicholson didn't just play the log lady. She obviously did everything behind the scenes and even shot a scene for Eraserhead. She played the double amputee woman in those two short films that Lynch made to test out film footage.
And he's the nurse, I think, or the doctor.
Exactly. So they have a long history together. Even in that amazing, I wouldn't say it's a documentary, but it's sort of like a confessional that Lynch shot for the making of Eraserhead, where he tells all those stories. Yeah, and he brings her in on the phone.
Oh yeah.
And she just, like I said, she's just this amazing woman that, and especially if you listen to the interview she did with me, you can tell that she was really excited about this Twin Peaks, and we were talking about not only her role in terms of where it would be in terms of getting Cooper out of the lodge, but also talking about something that I want to talk about later with you, Joel, and that is, how is Lynch and Frost going to manage to shoot Twin Peaks in the internet day day that we are in today? You know what I mean? Like, with everybody got camera phones and tweets and Instagrams, and how were they going to keep this secret? And she was very much like, well, they're going to have to find a way. And this has been a struggle for like the last few weeks. I mean, it was, I don't know if we should maybe get into that in a little bit, but her loss is not only huge in terms of Twin Peaks and its fandom, but also to the world of David Lynch,
Yeah. And it's weird in a way. We're talking about how cool she was, and they used her sort of like judiciously, and it's almost like you could say she is the most iconic character of the show. And there's definitely rivals. You could say Killer Bob, you could say Cooper with the tape recorder, or Audrey kind of dancing, or Laura wrapped in plastic, and that's all true. But I feel like she's there's other FBI agents, there's other victims and victims and all these different categories that these people fall in, even if they're like the best example of it. But there's no other log lady. You know what I mean? There's nobody else who does what the log lady does on that show. It's so unique to Twin Peaks. It's such a unique image. And I think, in many ways, she really was like the soul of Twin Peaks. And it's just,
But, it's not just because she was the soul of Twin Peaks. She's been, like, a crucial part to Lynch's filmmaking.
Yes, absolutely.
For
She's
40
been, like,
years.
one of that core cadre, like.
Exactly.
Basically, like, her and Jack Nance, you could almost say, were the two most, like, fundamental, like, Lynch players, like, just from the very beginning,
Exactly. And in fact, Catherine Nicholson, I think she tells David Lynch in that Eraserhead thing that she really wishes she had fought to have a hairstyle. I think it was hairstyle for Jack Nance. But she also got labeled assistant to the director for that film, and she did everything behind the scenes that Lynch wasn't able to do himself. So in a way, she is the unsung hero to Eraserhead.
Yes.
Which is the start of David Lynch's career. And if Eraserhead had never been made, Mel Brooks never would have seen him to direct The Elephant Man. And then we never would have gotten Blue Velvet. We never would have gotten Twin Peaks. So in a way, she, helped start this whole David Lynch,
That's why I almost feel like, not that superstitious, but somehow with Lynch, these cosmic things always seem to occur. I feel like, and I don't think they anything together since Fire or Twin Peaks. Like, she wasn't...
Right.
She didn't have a cameo. Or the Log Lady introductions, actually. That was the last thing I think he shot with her. And I don't know. I just... It's gonna feel logical if somehow we see her. And like you said, it may not be what was intended. They may have had to, unfortunately, change plans, and maybe there was something great. But I just feel like we're gonna see her somehow... And somehow, like, even if they didn't know, like, they just, something clicked. I mean, it's weird that he said to her, don't play in the street, or don't, basically, like,
right,
stay with us. And that, I think that's the only actor that has, reported him saying that. So it's almost like, they kind of knew on some level or something. So I feel like something happened, and they found a way to sort of send off that character in a good way. Not saying that the character would pass away on the show, but maybe that would happen. But I doubt they would go in that direction. But just a nice way to sort of say goodbye to that character on the show, So I'm hoping that.
Do you think that Lynch has or wanted to shoot Log Lady introductions for these new episodes?
Wow, that's a really good question. And now I'm almost wondering if they did that first. If he did. But of course, I don't think he would, because it's very up in the air how many episodes there will be, I think. And he kind of wants to shoot it as a movie. So maybe not. But, I mean, boy, that would be really amazing if the new series started and the first thing you see is Fade Up and the Log Lady sitting there by the fire. Not put it up anymore, and she says, welcome to Twin Peaks or something like that. Like, that would just be wow.
Well, how do you?
That would be pretty amazing.
How do you feel
if that was her?
About those Log Lady introductions that they shot for Bravo. I mean, are you a fan of those?
Yes, I am. I don't know if I was I always had to watch them, like it was almost compulsive, and then I'd feel kind of frustrated afterwards, like, but what did that even, but over time, especially like when I was working on the videos and stuff, and actually like kind of not just hearing her say them, but read them and look at like things like, oh, that's an interesting. I really feel like they offer a very unique window into David Lynch's immediate post-Twin Peaks looking back on it mindset. And even aside from the cool little poems and things she says, and just, it's always cool to see Catherine Coulson in character doing her thing. Even aside from that, I love them for that, because I think they kind of show us how the show had failed, the movie had failed, and it seemed at the time Twin Peaks was over, and Lynch was looking back on it now, not from the perspective of how can I continue this, how can I take this to a different place, but simply, okay, this is what I've got, how does it add up, what does it mean, how does it come together and to form a whole, even though the process of making it was such a clusterfuck. And I think in the USC talks, Coulson says that she went into the wood, David Lynch, you get the call from Bravo, and he went up into the woods in Washington and sat in the woods for several hours with a printed out synopsis of the episodes, or just simple little descriptions, couple lines of each episode, and he meditated and wrote the intros based on that. So it's just kind of fascinating to me because I think it's the first step in that direction that David Lynch did really over that 2 decades. He would keep sort of coming back to Twin Peaks, and it's the first step toward making it seem like a coherent whole, even though, like I said, the making of it was more chaotic than probably the making of anything else he'd ever made, maybe except for Dune, Like, it really, a lot of it was out of his control. The stuff that ended up happening, there was absolutely no plan for it to happen in the first place, but we get those little intros with her sitting there and frame, from the very beginning, she frames it a certain way, and even during the bad, mid-season episodes, she has sort of perspectives. Like, there's one I always think of as an example where, I think it's episode 19, which may very well be the worst episode, and although it's kind of the bad episodes, it's kind of a fun one in a way, but it's the one where Dick Tremaine has little Nicky, and they go on their, like, camping excursion, and Dead Dog Farm, I think, is discovered, and Audrey kind of has her last thing with Coop where she kisses him, and all these little things. So at the beginning, they do this whole thing about it. She gives the speech about the dead dog. That's her Log Lady intro for that episode.
Mm-hmm.
And she says the dog was black and white. It's just like kind of, immediately makes you think of the lodges, and it's kind of funny. It's like, it's almost like even here he's finding a way to kind of tie it into the bigger picture,
Well, remember,
so that's my take on the Log Lady intros.
Remember, the black dog runs at night.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he has a thing about dogs, the angriest dog in the world.
Well, I just love the fact that, like, it was cut out of Fire Walk with Me, and you can see a little bit in the missing pieces, but people make fun of things like Dead Dog Farm and all that stuff, but it all came back in Fire Walk with Me with the laxatives being sold as cocaine.
Yeah. I have a weird suspicion that Dead Dog Farm was one of those things like, and I have no proof of this whatsoever, but that it was one of those things like Josie being stuck in the drop hole where, like, Lynch just kind of poked his head in the writer's room or said, what about a place called Dead Dog Farm, or like something, because it seems so immediate. Just the name, the location, even the bizarre, like, thing that the realtor says. Like,
right.
It's one of the few things about those stretch of episodes that actually feels like Lynch. So I always wonder about that.
Yeah, like I said many times, I'm a Twin Peaks apologist. I'll find anything in the show to like, even the worst aspects of the show. I'll be like, oh no, that's brilliant, actually, and I can justify it because I'm insane. But I don't know. I'm really bummed about this news. Obviously, I think a lot of people across the internet are completely bummed, and I just hope that Lynch is able to, still go forward with what he was wanting to do. I hope they don't have to change too much of the script. So. Yeah,
and I'm glad you brought up the Log Lady intros, actually, because I feel like I was almost forgetting to mention them, and now when I look at it, that's almost like just sort of sealing the deal on the idea of the Log Lady as this, like, gatekeeper for Twin Peaks, But
what I'm saying, though, is do you think... I guess Lynch does like those introductions because they were put on the Blu-ray and also the gold box.
Yeah.
Because I
think they make it seem like a single piece to him, which is obviously important because he wants to shoot the new one like a movie, and he's always talking about,
I was always concerned about that
and all of that.
I didn't know if he just shot those for Bravo as sort of a to fulfill a contract, so that they would bring in new peakers, to see some new footage, or whether he generally liked that. But obviously I guess he must really do, because
I think so. Yeah, that was the impression I got, especially from that anecdote that she said of it, of him, like, going into the woods and writing them.
Right,
it's so perfect.
Well, let's change subjects here, and I'm sure we'll come back and talk about her a little bit more, but let's talk about what you think about the way the internet has been treating this Twin Peaks production so far. With the fact that Lynch and Frost have both come out saying, please stop sending pictures and posting spoilers about every little thing. I mean, do you feel they are right in order to ask that? I personally do, and I like to see the internet shut up once in a while. Although it is the internet, and maybe as another person on this podcast, Eric has said before, that maybe Lynch and Frost should embrace the internet, kind of like Carlton Cuse and Damon Lindelof when they did Lost, and really use the internet to their advantage. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Do you think they're just
he kind of did that with his contract negotiations, it seems like, although I don't know how much that was intentional or what, but...
Ooh, do tell.
Well, no, I'm just saying nothing secretive, just the fact that he went on Twitter and said what he said,
right.
And it caused this firestorm, and then the fans made the page. It was like, that was like textbook use of how to use social media to your advantage.
Right.
In like a negotiating situation or whatever,
and that's what negates a little bit of what you've suggested about whether they knew about Catherine Coulson's illness.
Yes, yeah.
Because
that was 6 months ago, though, so maybe it happened more recently.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was just saying that, like, for Lynch to say he's not going to do it, and then come back and do it. I mean, maybe, and I'm only speculating here. Yeah. Maybe he came back to do it because Catherine Coulson.
I mean, the thoughts occurred to me that there was somehow, I don't know. I have nothing to add to that, but yeah, I've thought about that.
I'm just merely throwing it out there.
After hearing this news, yeah, it inspired something of like, okay, I want to do this. I mean, I think they met his terms as well.
Sure.
It seems like he did get what he wanted in the end, but maybe.
Do we have any idea what all that nonsense was about?
Well, I mean, he said from the beginning it was about, a budget, and that seemed to be sort of confirmed by some of the people who he spoke to, and then I think even Nevins and Showtime kind of, framed it in those terms. So, yeah, I think it was a matter of, obviously it was a matter of money, but I have a feeling that what that tied into was like treating this not as episodic television, even though that's what it will end up being delivered as. Because it seems like as much as Lynch loves the idea of the ongoing story, and this TV has been a medium that has just frustrated him endlessly, Like there's so many examples from his career of things not working out, like, just
Mulholland Drive on the air.
American Chronicles.
American Chronicles.
Yeah, it's just like
Hotel Room.
And what was that?
Hotel Room.
What'd you say?
Hotel Room.
Oh yeah, yes, exactly. It's like it's just been relentless for him. So I feel like it is sort of an odd phrase. Shoot this like a movie. Like, well, what does that mean? I'm guessing, obviously it involves a certain type of budget, but I think also just let me get my crew and cast together and go on location and on set afterwards and shoot. We're not shooting this in like a format where we're chopping it up into the little sausages that are going to, perfectly fit. We're not. This is, by the way, obviously my speculation. This isn't like, I'm not Will McLeod. I have a direct line to David Lynch, apparently. But, I'm just speculating. But that seems like the way he talked about it and his history with the medium, it just seems like he wanted to have the freedom that he has when he makes a feature film, making this 18 or whatever hour TV show, apparently.
But do you think that's, really what it is? It's like he's going to shoot this as one big movie and then decide when they edit it to like go, okay, that's a good spot to have episode 2 end. And then, I would
not be shocked.
So that's why. So that's why there's no.
And
confirmation.
There'll be like an hour episode, and then a 2-hour one, and then I wouldn't be shocked if he did that.
Because that's the only way I can.
Surprised maybe, but.
Well, to say we don't know if this is going to be 9 episodes or 18. Yeah. That is a huge difference.
I don't know if anybody knows.
And the other thing was, because you had Lynch and Frost writing the script, right? And what concerned me was when they said, "Oh, we're going to go to 18 episodes." I thought, okay, are we adding more story here, or are we stretching it out? Are we turning this into Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, where we're going to just lengthen it out so much that it's going to dilute the power? Because at first, when I heard it was 9 hours long, or roughly around that, I was excited because that is the length of the first season. And that first season is all killer and no filler. Yeah. So the idea of them taking a 9 hours...
And that's something that they've utilized for recent TV shows, too.
Exactly. But the idea of them... And again, I'm only just talking here, but the idea of them taking a 9-hour script and then stretching it out to 18 hours, I was like, okay, Lynch... Really, how slow are you going to have these old people walk across the room? So that's the thing. I hope that they just shoot it, and whatever it is. I don't want it to be a thing where they had to add in more little Nicky stuff to stretch it out to Showtime's contractual 18 episodes or something.
Yeah, and I guess conversely. As much as I'm someone who argues, you should not have a 4-hour version of Firewalk with Me. Missing pieces are great, but keep them, on the side. As much as I would argue that, I also think it will be nice not to feel like he has to cut stuff out either. I mean, if stuff should be cut out, then it should. But, I think it'll be nice to kind of have that freedom to cut things out, to add things in. And it doesn't have to be 9 or 18. It can be as long as it needs to be,
Well, that being said, let me just pause there for a second and say this, because you brought up Firewalk with Me. Firewalk with Me is 2 hours and 14 minutes. Maybe, I think it's like 2:15, but with all the credits being done. The reason why it's 2 hours and 15 minutes is not because that's Lynch's preferred cut. It's because that was the longest he could make that movie for North American release. If New Line had said, Lynch, you have a 3-hour, you can go up to 3 hours, Firewalk with Me would have been up to 3 hours.
I don't know, though. I mean, I could see it being 2.5 hours or something, but I would say a good 2/3 of the missing pieces absolutely just have no place in that movie and wouldn't have fit in.
No. But there are some scenes where I totally could say yes, that would have made it into the film.
Yeah. I think it could be longer than 2 hours and 50 minutes, but I don't think with what he shot, I don't think it could be that much longer.
No, but I do think
what I mean. I don't think he and Mary Sweeney would have been able to justify widening. Here's the thing with the original version of Firewalk with Me. It's not like Inland Empire, like what Mulholland Drive ended up being. I mean, we can debate about Inland Empire, but there's a lot of material there, obviously, and it plays like a lot of material, even Wild at Heart to a certain extent. There's these tangents and these side trips, but there's a lot of them. Like with Firewalk with Me, there's almost not enough of them. And I think we talked about this before too. It's like, if he did want to make that kind of sprawling saga, he would have needed more material to justify it. Good example being the Norma and Ed scene, which I agree with you is fantastic. But the only way it could have worked in the movie is to have more scenes like that, where they cut away to other characters and it complemented. Instead, they had, I haven't counted them, but maybe between a dozen, 15 or something scenes where they just randomly cut to Nadine skinning a deer or something. It didn't work. It was almost like he was trying to write a Twin Peaks, but he kind of knew in his heart that wasn't really where the movie was headed. But he wrote it anyways, and he shot a lot of it, and then it kind of became what it had to become. So I think for a longer cut of that movie to actually work as its own thing, it almost would have needed, which is bizarre to say because there's so much deleted material, it almost would have needed twice as much of that stuff.
Well, you do know, I mean, you being a Twin Peaks expert like myself, that there's a lot more that they didn't include on the missing pieces. And I also think that using today's ways of storytelling with like Marvel's end credits scenes and stuff like that. I could have totally seen. Now, of course, they don't think about this in 1992, but let's just say today, I could totally see after the end credits is over, it fading back up and saying some months later, and then you have the Annie in the hospital scene. I could see that being a post-credit scene today.
Like, I mean, I know theoretically, but I feel, and actually that's a good comparison in a way, because I feel that scene is a little bit pointless. Not the Annie one. That sort of adds something new, but the Cooper one is like literally, and you and James talked about this, it's pretty much literally like exactly what we saw at the end, except extended by a few seconds. And like people are like really excited, like I can't. And to me, I was just kind of like, okay. I mean, it's I guess fun to see that, and widescreen and all of that. But that really, unless there's really some cryptic clue in there that'll only make sense when we see 2017. Like maybe the fact that he didn't see, they didn't show body mirror or something. Like it really is only like that thing they would show at the end of a Marvel movie of like, hey, look, here's Thor's footprint or whatever the hell that was at the end of.
I think it just
Man
works
2.
because you have Cooper just cold with that beautiful Badalamenti music underneath him going, I didn't brush my teeth yet, and it just cuts to black. It's creepy, Yeah, it's a little pointless, but it's still creepy.
But it almost, and now that we're getting more, it feels good. Like it feels like, okay, like sort of what you're saying, like just a little placeholder reminder, you watch the missing pieces and you're like, is that it for Twin Peaks? No, there's a little more to come, and a lot more to come. But if that was just the ending, and even if they had put that in, I'm sure there would have not been any more Twin Peaks movies. It would almost take away from the finale a little bit, because that image of him laughing with the mirror and Bob behind him is like such a great, like if that's going to be the ending of Twin Peaks,
right,
it's got to end with that image rather than him being like, I got to brush my teeth. It's like a little redundant almost,
Right.
It takes away from it in a little way to me.
Right.
If it was the ending, which clearly now it's not going to be.
Yeah, definitely. But what do you think about the way the internet has been, going after the Twin Peaks production, showing up on set, taking pictures of things, and they maybe not should be taking pictures of, and posting spoiler threads and stuff like that. I mean, where do you stand on all that?
So far, to me, it seems pretty respectful. I think if they really don't want people around, they can get rid of them, and it seems like they have. Like supposedly lately, they've been shooting in places where it's like blocked off, kind of. And maybe that's like a response, like, hey, God, there's too many of these people around or something. But it also could just be they planned for the early stuff to be seen, and now they're ready to shoot some stuff they don't want to be seen.
I really hope
so far, I haven't seen anything that I was like, oh, that's too much. That's like in your face, or like, it all seems sort of like respectful, distanced type of material. And, I've been looking for some of that stuff. Like I didn't think I was going to want to know that much about it when they started, but I'm definitely in the position now where I'm like, I want to know all of the stuff that's known. I don't want to know any really spoiler stuff if that eventually comes out, but the type of stuff that's been coming out I think is fine.
Right.
And I don't think I think they said, yeah, like keep the mystery alive, and it's sort of a vague statement. I feel like if he was really offended by the way people are doing it, they'd say more. And a lot of people too, like buckled it down pretty tightly. Like on Doug Pa, I know even in the spoiler thread, there's sort of a rule, like don't actually post pictures here. Like, if you want to share them or say you have them or whatever, okay, but like just don't make this a venue for that type of thing. Which even that type of thing, personally, I don't think is that offensive or anything.
Right.
Sorry, that's kind of vague, but I don't want to get too specific yet in the podcast. Maybe someday I'll get more.
Yeah, to me, the stuff that's come out, I don't really. I mean, yes, if you're extra sensitive to things, yes, I mean, it is some spoilers and stuff like that. But but nothing has come out yet that has like sealed the deal. Like, oh my god, that just ruins the entire new show. By hearing about that, there's nothing about Agent Cooper or anything like that. So, and the stuff that is being released, and I'm not going to go into detail here, but I have to wonder whether this stuff is actually in the show or whether Lynch is specifically shooting things just to confuse people on the set so that they report this stuff and that him and his cast can have a chuckle at, what is being reported all over the internet.
Well, it reminds me of this very much while shooting Citizen Kane, and the RKO executives came, and he was just like, all right, that's a wrap for the day. We're going to play baseball. And they all went out like into the field and played baseball until the RKO executive went away. So who knows? That seems sort of Lynchian in spirit, maybe.
Right. Okay, Joel. Before we get into possible spoiler territory and people exit the podcast, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me at thedancingimage.blogspot.com, and the title of the blog is Lost in the Movies, and that's also the name of the YouTube channel. I have a Tumblr now with a dash between all the words, so type that phrase Lost in the Movies with dashes between each word .tumblr.com, and on Twitter at Lost in the Movies, and the Journey Through Twin Peaks series is on the YouTube channel Lost in the Movies. So you can find that there as well.
And tell the listeners about your IndieWire.
Oh, yeah. So I recently reached out to Max Winter, who publishes a lot of video essays on IndieWire, shares them with the readers. And I noticed he had posted some Twin Peaks ones, so I thought, he'll probably like this. So I shared my video, seven facts about Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which is a part of Journey Through Twin Peaks, but it's also kind of a standalone. It works both ways. And he wrote a nice little write-up for it and shared it, and I shared that on Twin Peaks Worldwide, and I think a lot of people particularly picked up on it from there. I noticed when I shared that on Twin Peaks Worldwide, the views spiked. So you got a lot of enthusiastic readers and viewers there, so that's great. So that was shared recently, and it can be found. I'm trying to think. I guess best way would be IndieWire's Press Play blog. I think it's IndieWire /Press Play. I hope I'm right about that.
Well, if they can Google it too.
Check the show notes.
Yeah, and also you can just Google it, IndieWire Fire Walk with Me. I'm sure it'll come up.
And I think he reasons why Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is an underrated masterpiece, which is definitely an eye-catching title. So you've got
and they're gonna
saying, yes, it is. No, it isn't.
And they're gonna share another one of your videos pretty soon as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I couldn't remember if I mentioned that in there. They're actually, I gave them permission to just directly upload to their channel an earlier video I made called "Take This Baby and Deliver It to Death," which is a paraphrase from Jennifer Lynch's Secret Diary of Laura Palmer. And it cuts together, without narration, a bunch of Lynch's early films, particularly interweaving Eraserhead and Fire Walk with Me, and kind of shows how some of the darker themes in his work built up to a certain point by juxtaposing different moments and kind of escalating the tension and stuff. So that was one I really liked doing, and I'm really glad that they wanted to share that. So keep your eyes peeled. That will be appearing there as well soon.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this stuff with us. Now,
yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me on. And now let's continue into spoiler land.
Okay, so, you guys, I have no idea what Joel and I are going to talk about next. Really, I don't. But it may verge into spoiler territory. I'm someone who's very sensitive to spoilers, so I don't know how deep this conversation is going to get before I tell Joel, stop! Don't tell me anymore.
Well, it sounds like you know some more than I do, actually.
Okay.
I didn't know about that whole scene, so...
Whoa, hang on.
Oh, we'll get there.
But anyway, if you guys don't want to hear any more, please just turn off the podcast and have yourself a wonderful night, and we will see you next time. But if you do want to keep listening, I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but you have been warned. So... I'm going to give you guys 5 seconds to turn this off. All right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, you guys, you've been warned. Here we go. So Joel, what's this I hear about Agent Cooper getting killed?
Yes, Audrey Horne blew up in the bank vault, but her ghost comes back to haunt him and takes the form of Amanda Seyfried. And from what I understand, this is all made up, by the way. I was like, how long can I continue with
Well,
this?
she is the Jack with one eye.
Yeah.
So here's the thing.
None of that's true,
No,
if you're
no,
listening. If you haven't turned off in anger already.
All right, well, so here's the rumors going around, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, the rumor going around is that Shelley Johnson, before she was married, her maiden name was Rod. Her dad was Carl Rod, played by Harry Dean Stanton in Fire Walk with Me. And Amanda Seyfried, or Seyfried, however you say it, is also a waitress at the Double R, but may be Shelley's daughter. And we don't know if it's by Leo or by Bobby, presumably Bobby. So because those two actresses and Harry Dean Stanton have been in scenes together that people have witnessed being shot at the Fat Trout Trailer Park at its new location, what do you think about this? The idea of bringing it back to Fire Walk with Me, but also, is it kind of a bummer that Lynch and Frost are deliberately tying in characters from Twin Peaks into the Harry Dean Stanton character? Or do you think, you know what I mean? Like, is it
Anakin building C-3PO?
Exactly. Is it a little too coincidental, or are you just like, hallelujah?
I'm so happy to see Harry Dean Stanton. I could, if it turned out he was like an astronaut from the planet of creamed corn, I think I could accept it.
Garmin Bozia.
Exactly. That's the place he's been.
So let's get into this real quick. Okay, so you are a huge fan of Fire Walk with Me. So what do you think about this? The idea of bringing back the Fat Trout Trailer Park. Is this just Lynch wanting to work with Harry Dean Stanton again, or do you think this is going to tie back into the mystery somehow?
I think it's both. I don't know if it'll tie back specifically to Teresa Banks, but I mean, if you mean the larger mystery with the ring and all that sort of stuff.
Well, because we don't know how Teresa Banks.
Yeah,
we don't know how Teresa Banks got the ring.
Yeah, we don't know anything. That's one of the fascinating things about that whole ring is like, and I'm a little worried about it coming back, and even was a little uncertain about the scene with the nurse and Annie, because the way it works in the movie is very ambiguous. You know that there's some sort of supernatural link with Mike and the little man and all of that stuff. You also know there's a very practical function because it's an item from Teresa Banks that was, who was murdered by Leland, and Laura is kind of confronted with it, and that means she knows that, he was the one who killed Teresa. So it serves that very plot-specific function as well. And it's got the Owl Cave symbol on it, so it kind of ties into the show. Although one of my favorite sort of wacky fan theories that I really like, I guess you could call this headcanon, would be that the symbol on the ring is not actually the owl. It's because it's kind of elongated and turned upside down. There was a guy on Dugpa named, or could have been a girl actually, a person on Dugpa named Fernanda, who suggested that what that actually was corn, because it looks like an ear of corn. And I don't know why, but I love that idea that it's actually signifying Garmin Bozia, which makes sense in a lot of ways, a lot more than the owls, because there are no owls in Fire Walk with Me. So I kind of like the idea that maybe Lynch retconned the owl into corn, and it's so it's like Mike sealing the deal, like I've got my Garmin Bozia now, you wore this ring. So there's so many ambiguous things about the ring. It's kind of fun not totally knowing, and I hope I do. Part of me really does want to see it again, but I hope it's ambiguous enough that it doesn't spoil that. Like, nope, it was just a portal to the lodge. None of that other stuff mattered. Or, no, it was just his personal ring and all of that. So,
but it's so weird how the show never mentions the ring, and Fire Walk with Me is all about the ring.
Although I agree. And the ring, and I'm trying to think what else. That's the big one. A Garmin Bozia, although the creamed corn is in it, but they don't call it that. That was one of those things where I watched the show and the film in kind of close proximity, and then I rewatched the show and, rewatched it again many years later. And it took me a long time to realize, wait a second, Garmonbozia is never mentioned till the film, because
Right.
it like settles in your mind so specifically. And then I'm like, no, they never use that word. And same thing with the ring. It's like it's strictly a Fire Walk With Me thing. So
Right.
it's true, but on the same time, they have the owl symbol, so that ties into the show. And also, I always see connections with Cooper's ring and the way it's used, because I think in both cases you have a ring signifying like knowing something or sort of resolving a case. On the show, it's his ring taken, and it's like he gets it back when he realizes what Laura said in the dream. And then on Fire Walk With Me, the ring comes to Laura. Well, you could argue any number of things of why it comes to her, but one of the things that doesn't mean when you see it in her vision, she says, "Oh, the same ring." It's remembering seeing it on Teresa's ring and then seeing it next to her father when Mike's waving it and saying, "It's him, it's your father." So in both cases, you have a ring that it represents sort of knowing, well, specifically knowing who kills somebody. So that's kind of interesting. I think it's one of those things where, for all the differences of Fire Walk With Me from the film, from the show, there are also some ways where it kind of digs back into the material and like spits it up in a new, interesting way. So I kind of think that's one of them. And yeah, I would love to see it on the new show, but I hope they leave it. I hope they leave some stuff to our imagination.
I'm sure they will. But one of the things also that I'm interested about the Fat Trout Trailer Park is because this one trailer, that shows up that Chet Desmond finds the ring under, how there's that bright light inside of it, and that's where the Treemans or Chalfonts or whatever they're called, there is something going on at that trailer park.
Yes.
And also think about the Harold Smith trailer park. It's
what is that a trailer or like a neighbor? Like what is
that's like
shot of it.
It's like a mobile home park.
Interesting. Okay, I never really
which is really weird.
I never totally picked up on what's going on in that area.
Yeah,
that's the first time I've heard someone mention it.
Because in the show, it's a mobile home park, but in the movie, Harold Smith obviously was living in another location. Because when Laura pulls up,
the greenhouse and all of that are in.
Well, because it's not like they're not yards.
It's not like an RV. It's not as much as Fat Trout, but it's still like a
no, it's like it's a mobile house that you can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I got what you're saying.
Because if you notice the way Harold Smith's like peeking out the windows, it's not like over yards and gardens. It's like just right. It's door to door. It's right next to each other. Harold Smith next door.
It's a little like the courtyard in Mulholland Drive, where they have. I mean, that's different because that's more apartment unit. Well, they're sort of separate. It actually is a little similar to that now that I think about it. Huh. I never thought of that before.
But yeah, so, and the thing that always, and I don't want to get on this tangent, but the thing that always got me was that Harold Smith's apartment in the show was so mysterious and otherworldly. And then you see his set in the movie, and it looks like a high school play. It just has no mystery at all to it. It's just brightly lit.
No, like presents or whatever. Yeah, I can't really. I've heard people say it's like really different in the movie.
It is. There's no orchids. There's nothing.
It's just kind of like colors, and I think it's because of how he shoots it.
Right.
It's very like functional, like you're saying, like maybe almost like a high school play. Like it's like she comes through the door, they're on the couch, and it's like close-ups, which is kind of how the movie is shot in a lot of ways. But so in my mind, I kind of blur it with the show, but I've heard people say, "Oh no, it's really different. You don't see this in the background, and this is in a different spot, and that." And
well, it's like when
kind of interesting.
Like when every time they went to Harold Smith in the show, they have like this Harold Smith kind of cue that Badalamenti did. And
I love that theme. It's like one of my favorite themes.
And that music isn't anywhere seen in Fire Walk With Me with Harold Smith. It's just that she comes in. There's no music at all. It's just completely dead quiet except for when the sound effects kick in when her coffee teeth come out. And
that ominous rumble.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, there's no mood there. And when you see Harold Smith in the movie, Let's say you watched Fire Walk with Me. I know people who've done this, who watched Fire Walk with Me first, then watched the series, right? You would never even think that Harold Smith had anything to do with Laura's murder. Like, you may have when you first watched the show.
Yeah, well, he's very Norman Batesy on the show.
Right, but
he even looks a little like him.
But in the movie, he's just painted as a tragic victim, another tragic victim. And, you know, and of course, you know, with his haircut and stuff like that. It's just Lynch's, I mean, like, the thing about Fire Walk with Me that always gets me is it is the most rushed Lynch film ever. To go from June 91, where the show ended, and then within 11 months, the movie is premiering at Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah, totally. It's crazy.
So whenever there's like things in it, then I go, I don't understand that. It's weird to think, is this really a mistake? You know, kind of like the way Kubrick shot The Shining, or was this all on purpose? The fact that everything is flipped, the fact that Chet Desmond is CD as opposed to Dale Cooper, which is DC. You know, the fact that Deer Meadows, the complete opposite of Twin Peaks. The fact that the homecoming pictures are swapped from the house and the school. You know, it just goes on and on and on. You know, and there's so many of these flips that you have to think this was done on purpose. But
well, there's somebody at the USC again. You know, I love those, and actually, that's another thing. If people are still listening, on my channel, I organized. I didn't upload these because I wasn't there. I wish I had been. But somebody put all the USC videos on the web, and they're like scattered. Like nobody had a playlist, so I made a playlist with all of them. And, you know. You can't. I don't think you can listen to them all at once because it's hours and hours of material. But you know, if you want to check in on them and pick up where you left off, they're fascinating. Like there's so many anecdotes that I've only heard from there. Like Frost saying that they didn't know the killer in the pilot, but they figured it out soon after, which is really interesting. It makes you wonder when that point was. But anyways, to get back to the topic, in the USC retrospective, a prop person and Al Strobel are talking, and the prop guy, Al Strobel's kind of going on a sort of esoteric tangent about, you know, other universes and how meditation brings you in contact with that. And the prop guy goes, okay, well, now that you've said this, I can say something I didn't want to say because I figured nobody would believe me. But when we were shooting Firewalk with Me, I kept asking Lynch about props and how can we get this and that, and he said, you know, don't worry about it. Think of it as an alternate universe. So I do think a lot of that stuff was intentional, probably building from the fact that he knew he couldn't reproduce so many things. He had to kind of have that mentality. But yeah, I think he purposefully tweaked a lot of those details. And somebody pointed out the Hayward house, it's like the same set. They shot it on a soundstage, but they changed all the furniture, the wallpaper, the color of everything, like almost like maybe they had gotten rid of the props and they only had the set. But it's another case of him, like, and of course you have Donna, who I'm still holding out hope. I'm sure this won't happen, but I would love to see Moira Kelly and Lara Flynn Boyle return as like some sort of Donna doppelgangers in the new series. Like I really want that to happen. Like, and it would be the perfect like in-universe way of being like, here's why there's two different, you know, I mean, that would be the cheesy aspect, which would be fun, but just, you know, I think Lynch could really play with that idea, and it would be so Lynchian to do that. And
well, one of my favorite moments from the missing pieces, and I've said this before, so I apologize if you guys have heard me rattle off about this. I just think it's so clever, and I've never seen anybody else mention this, so I have to, and that is when Laura and Donna are with the two guys in the missing pieces, right? Mm-hmm. And they start doing donuts in the dirt, right? With the car. They start going around circles. But while they're doing donuts, there's a sign there that says Cooper Tires. And I thought that was just so clever to do donuts with Cooper. It's just great.
Yeah.
You know, we had somebody write into us. I don't know if you heard. Did you hear the Wyndham Earle theory?
Yes, I was reading about that. I'm trying to think if I heard you guys. Yeah, I heard you talk about it, and I read the guy's comment who elaborated on it.
All right, so for those of you who don't know, the guy was I'm sorry, I want to say his name again and give him credit because I thought it was very cool. But can you just tell him a little bit while I'm looking this up?
Do you want me to tell it?
Yeah. While I'm looking it up, because I want to.
Okay, let me see if I can remember. I don't want to misrepresent it. So I think it was saying the Wyndham Earl on the show is actually a doppelganger. The real Wyndham Earl disappeared inside the lodge in like '68 or '60, back when he was doing Project Blue Book.
Right.
Which is definitely an interesting idea, and
the reason for
I don't know what to make of it totally, but it's cool to think about.
Well, one of the reasons was that he brought it up was because how did Leland, as Bob, know about the stabbing in Pittsburgh?
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, I lost you for a second. You're saying how did Leland,
as Bob, know about the stabbing in Pittsburgh?
Right, unless Bob is sort of omnipresent evil and
his
omniscient or whatever, which they do suggest sometimes.
His name was Jeff, and I'm sorry, I don't have your last name here, but one of the comments he actually wrote in and said, "Hey, it's me. Thanks very much for talking about my theory regarding Wyndham Earl. Another thing about it, when Cooper is in the lodge in the final episode, he's the only one speaking normally. Everyone else speaks that slurred doppelganger lodge spirit way. When Wyndham says to Cooper, 'Give me your soul and I'll let Annie live,' he's speaking slurred like a doppelganger. Cooper is the only real human in the lodge speaking normally. So is Annie, but we never see Annie in the lodge, just an image of her conjured up. The real Annie is a bloody mess when we see her when she's released and taken to the hospital in the outtake on the DVD." Interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, well,
the fact that
Annie brings up the whole question of who's doppelgangers and who aren't.
And the fact that Annie is wearing in the missing pieces Caroline's dress.
Yes. Yeah, that's so bizarre. I mean, that's a perfect detail of is this just an oversight, or does he have some thought process behind this or feeling behind it?
When she comes out of the lodge, now I could be wrong. All right, I mean I've seen the episode a million times, but I think when she comes out of the lodge, she comes out in her dress from when he missed Twin Peaks.
Yes.
She doesn't come out in Caroline's dress.
Yeah, and even in the lodge, sometimes she appears in that dress. She appears in Caroline's dress.
Right.
Basically, when she's duping Caroline, when she's lying on the floor with Cooper and the wound.
It's me.
Yeah, exactly that too. I think there's 2 times she appears in the flower dress, and at both times it's directly related to Caroline.
Right. Exactly. So.
Only thing I can think is visually, the idea is now she's in continuity with Caroline as being another victim of somebody,
But the ring was taken off her finger.
Right, exactly. And then that's the other question too, because I have a whole thing about the ring, and this ties into saying earlier, the ambiguity, and you can kind of read it the way you want. To me, it feels like it's not really about death or being a victim of Bob. It seems that way on the surface because it's well, Teresa had it and Laura had it and they both died. Well, gee, that's the most obvious thing that connects them. But then there's always little things like the fact that Teresa isn't wearing it when Leland kills her, and Lynch actually frames it so that she's grabbing, the left hand that had it, and her left hand is numb as well. Her left arm is numb, so she's holding the arm as if it's numb, and she has to keep it up. And at the same time, the hand is out, so you can see if you pause it or slow mo it or whatever. There's no ring on her finger. So he made a conscious decision, no ring on the finger, and I want her to be showing it. And this is side note. Apparently, according to the script and the production notes, That's the Chalfont's trailer, not hers. So he killed her in the Chalfont trailer.
And another thing I heard was that
then the ring was found underneath it.
Right. And then another thing I heard was that the original cut of Fire Walk With Me did not have Laura putting on the ring. That was an insert that was done without Cheryl Lee. Yeah,
that was. I think John Thorne is the one who believes that, just based on what people said. I think. Here's the thing, though. One of the pieces of evidence they talked about was Al Strobel didn't throw the ring in, but that was shot in Washington, and obviously because he's standing outside. I don't think that was an exterior shot in California, because they were shooting at the actual train car that's in the woods there. And then all the stuff with Cheryl Lee was on a set. So he could have come up with it in between those two.
Right.
But it definitely it wasn't in the script. We know that. And that changes the meaning too a little bit. It reframes it so that we have to, I think if it wasn't for that scene, we could, like, to come up with another theory about the ring would almost be sort of a stretch. Like, it would be like, well, there's all these reasons to believe it doesn't have to do with death and victimhood, but there's nothing to really make a counterclaim. But that right there, it's like the central thing where you're like, okay, for all of the ominous things about the ring and all of this other stuff, it clearly is represented as being a victory over Bob somehow. And that's what you kind of have to, like, figure out. So, like, to rewind with the nurse thing with Annie, that was shot, I believe that was shot in the Washington hospital, not on a soundstage.
Right.
I can't remember where I got that impression, but somehow I did. Like, I read something about them shooting in a hospital. So anyways, that was shot really early in production, way before the stuff was decided with Laura. Like, that's pretty clear. There was no, at the point where they shot that, and to have Laura take the ring. So then, the question becomes, A, what was it intended to mean originally, if there was, or if it was just like, hey, this is a cool thing, let's do this. And B, and this is more interesting to me, what does it mean now? Because I do think the missing pieces are canonical, and I think we're meant to accept them either as part of that universe or there's some weird new alternate universe thing that's going to happen. But either way, I think it's meant to be part of the story. Mm-hmm. So Lynch went back and said, and like you've said, he did cut things out of the missing pieces. Maybe that footage was lost, although if it's a pan down to a rose, how do you lose that tiny little piece of, maybe it was a messed up shot, I don't know. But there is stuff he didn't include. Maybe that scene was too big to not include, but either way, he made it part of the story now. So what does it mean now that he's taking the ring from Annie? We've seen that the ring actually apparently keeps Bob away. It doesn't actually, or I shouldn't keeps him away, but it keeps him from possessing the wearer, which is essentially why he kills Laura at the end of the movie. That seems to be pretty heavily suggested that, she puts on the ring and the immediate reaction is, oh no, don't make me do this. And, it goes from, hey, I want you to be my host to, well, now I'm going to kill you because you can't be you can't be the host. So I guess all of that's sort of a convoluted way of saying it's going to be really interesting to see how that scene impacts the new series and how it relates to what we were shown at the end of A Fire Walk With Me. Because I think it's going to come back into play somehow.
All right, Joel, enough with the mumbo jumbo. Just tell me right now, is Heather Graham coming back?
Who?
Heather Graham.
She's got to. I know people are like, oh, she was a replacement for Audrey, all that stuff. By the end of the series, she was way too important to it for them to.
And
that's my
she's
opinion.
Doing Lifetime.
Or she could be dead, but like it has to be like, oh, not just like, oh, shot, but like, well, she was Coop's partner for many years, or this or that. Like it has to be. I think she's going to be in it.
I mean,
even though nobody's talked about it.
She's doing
like
Lifetime
ever,
Flowers. She's doing Lifetime Flowers in the Attic movies. I think she can find time in her schedule to do Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
In fact,
I know they're saying Amanda Seyfried is Matt Shanamick's daughter, but she could definitely be Heather Graham's daughter too.
She could be a lot of people's daughters. I mean, she could be Lucy's daughter for all we know.
Yeah, that would work too. There's a number of characters she looks a little bit alike. Oh, here's a question for you. Do you think she's going to be the protagonist of the new Twin Peaks? Like, are we going to see it through her eyes?
Who, Amanda Seyfried?
Yes.
Here's the thing. I know Lynch likes to work with big name actors.
Sorry, I lost you again. Can you say it over?
No, well, Lynch works with big name actors all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be the first time that he's worked with a big name actor or actress and had them in a smaller part. I just don't see her tracking all the way up to Snoqualmie, Washington for a throwaway scene.
Mm-hmm.
So
and they kind of officially released it, didn't they?
yes, they did.
Didn't Showtime kind of like,
and it
they wouldn't do that if it was just a cameo.
And it made me laugh that so many people were like, "This is a spoiler. Do not post this." And I was like, "Okay, people, a spoiler is when someone sneaks on set and grabs a picture of Amanda Seyfried and then posts it on the internet. When Lynch and Frost publicly announced this, that's not a spoiler. They want you to know the casting."
I do have to say one thing. Oh, sorry, keep going.
No,
I do have to say one thing about the Seyfried and her being a waitress. I think there was a picture that people thought was her, and then someone said, "Oh, it's not her," where she was wearing the uniform. Do we know what she was wearing in the Fat Trout scenes? What's she wearing?
I don't know, but I do hear that she was spotted firing shotguns. So I don't know what the hell it's about. And I also heard that Shelley Johnson at one point is riding the hood of a car.
Yes, that's
and
Carl Rod's yelling or something.
Carl Rod is singing under a tree. And a shotgun blast goes off. Car tires start screeching, and Matt Shanamik's stunt double is on the hood of a car. Wow. What the hell is going on at Fat Trout Trailer Park? That's what I want to know.
Sounds like the cowboy and the Frenchman.
Exactly. So I hear this, right? Now, you could say, well, Cameron, these are little spoilers. Well, and maybe they are, but these are so out of nowhere that I can't even put them into context. This is one of those times where where it's like I kind of need to see it to understand what the hell I just said.
Yeah, Crispin Glover is wearing a Santa suit and he's rubbing up and down against a fence. Like, what does that tell you, really?
Exactly. Exactly.
Of course, then you see the movie and you don't really. It doesn't actually tell you much more than that. But still, you never know with a Lynch film.
Well, so I don't know. I mean, have you heard any other spoilers?
Let's see. I think we've covered the stuff on here that has been sort of talked about. No, it seems like that's been the big thing. The rest has just been location. Oh, they're putting up the Bang Bang sign at the Roadhouse.
Right. Or is it going to be the actual Bang Bang sign or the one from Fire Walk With Me? Again, flipped, where it's just bang.
Oh, it doesn't flip?
No, in the show it went bang bang, and then in the movie it was just bang.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
It's like literally like you could just go that movie frame by frame and like find like new random things. You never know if they're like mistakes or what, but it's like so many little things to pick apart. It's crazy. So actually, I want to go back though for a second and say to that question, like, so we definitely think she's going to be a major character. Right. But I think what I'm most interested in is because people are assuming continuation. Okay, bam, we're in the first scene, Coop and Truman doing this and that, and I like the idea more, and I feel like this is more what it's going to be, that we start like away from and outside, but kind of like we did with Deer Meadow and Fire Walk With Me. Like we start, maybe we're in Twin Peaks, but like with a character we've never met, or we're outside of Twin Peaks with someone trying to get there or something. I just feel like somehow it's going to be a little bit of a new view on that universe, and I feel like Cooper, and I think because they have to play with the idea of, is Bob still in, and what does that mean? I think he'll be acting like the old familiar Cooper. I don't think we're going to start off with Cooper's in an insane asylum, possessed by Bob or whatever. I think it's a little too obvious. I think Lynch loves to play with that ambiguity in all of his movies of, is this person this, or are they that, or what's really going on? So I feel like Cooper will be maybe the central subject of the series.
Right.
But I feel like we're not going to see it through his eyes. Like it's not going to be like the original show.
No.
Like wake up in the morning, blah blah. I think we're going to meet him through Seyfried or someone else. So I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think the show is going to begin with Albert and Dennis Denise Bryson driving back into town. That's where I put my money. And
that would be pretty wild.
Just Albert cruising
and
down the
Gordon
road.
Cole shouting in the back seat.
Yeah. Oh, are you gone? No. A lot of people were speculating, and I just, I will scream if this is the way they begin the show. With Amanda Seyfried floating wrapped in plastic, dead.
Well, actually, you were saying they wouldn't drive her up to Washington and all of that for. It actually occurred to me. I'm like, what if this is like a Psycho stunt where she's the dead girl and she's in the whole first episode and we follow her, and then at the end she's murdered or something.
Cooper comes in, kills her, wraps her in plastic.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually see who did it or something. Yeah, like maybe that's the twist of like she's going to be the face. I don't really think so, but you never know.
Well, then Deer Meadow is a terrible place to live.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I will scream if they just kind of, 25 years later, it is happening again. Another dead prom queen.
And they already did that
queen.
on the show itself with Matt. So it's not even like it could be a cool echo. Like they already did the cool echo.
Right.
So to now do it a third time.
Did you ever hear my crazy theory of how the second season of Twin Peaks should have gone?
Well, I know you thought Wyndham Earle should have been the one who shot Cooper.
Oh, yeah. No, and I love the Wyndham.
Oh, no, I love that idea. Where you're talking about as if almost Fire Walk With Me was the second half of season 2. Like, we just flash back, like Mulholland Drive-esque. Hey, we're through the blue box now. Like, Leland's killed Maddie, and boom, we're back to the past.
The story is over.
Yeah.
And then it just begins, and we just tell Laura's story for the last part of the second season. If that had happened, I think the viewers never would have left, and I think there would have been a third season.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because they had already, so many people had turned on it already at that point.
Yeah, but not as much as it would.
But
not as much as the James and Evelyn storyline.
Yeah, well, that was the final nail in the coffin.
Little Nicky, all that stuff.
That's a fascinating idea, and at least conceptually, I love it. It's like I almost wish there were alternate universes of Twin Peaks, so that which. We'll get to that in a second. But so that, like, you could see, well, what if the show just stopped? I mean, you can do that anyways. Like, you can mentally stop it there. But, like, what if that had actually been the last episode?
I still remember.
Like, Cooper staring at the curtains. And it feels like... I've heard people on a podcast where neither of them has seen the show before just say, this is weird. We're halfway through the series exactly, and this feels like an ending. Like, even though there's no, like, happy ending, it's like... This feels like end of Sopranos or this or that or, Breaking Bad, which I still haven't seen, but I know I'm going to get spoiled on at some point. But basically, like, this feels like an official, like, the end. And that would have been a perfect little narrative. I'm glad it didn't happen because the finale is my favorite episode. But, like, logically, it makes sense as an ending. So you could have that. Then you could have another universe where they do what you say, where they go into, like, the past. And the second half of the show is a flash. Like, that would just be perfect little symmetry. Even if it ended at the end of that season, like, that would be perfectly symmetrical and all of that. And then, another one where they do continue, but the subplots are better. Like, John Thorne's talked about that. Like, what if, little Nicky and Evelyn actually tied in? Like, what if, whose idea was it? Was it your idea that James goes to Deer Meadow and meets Teresa's sister or something like that? And then I think another cool alternative would be if Leland lived through the whole rest of the season, and the show became about like this tension of him, like maybe he becomes a deputy and he's like looking for people, or maybe he's like believes Ben's innocent, or claims to believe Ben's innocent. He couldn't have done it, and he defends him in court, and that whole route, which they could have done.
Yeah.
But they just were so eager to wrap it up that they didn't. But there's all these other possibilities, and honestly, what we have, except for where it ends up with the finale in the film, if it weren't for that, it's almost kind of like the least interesting of any of the possibilities that could have happened, Well,
I just think one of the funniest things, and again, you never think about this at the time, but, I just remember going back and rewatching the show when I got the gold box, and I'm sitting there watching Leland's wake, which honestly, that scene is really funny, it's tender, it's sweet, it's got a lot of great moments in it. But I'm just thinking to myself going, this small town is throwing a get-together for an accused rapist serial killer.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It's so bizarre, and it's what's bizarre about it is that nobody seems to know it's bizarre. Like, there's a lot of moments on Twin Peaks where they act strange,
Right.
and the show kind of winks at you like, we know they're acting strange right now, and isn't this weird? And we're not really going to tell you what it means. But that's a moment where it's like, well, yeah, of course, they're at the murderer's funeral. Why wouldn't they be? You know, let's all toast. Like, it's to me, it's in the same category as having them say, Leland, would you, Ben Horn, would you like to have Leland as your lawyer? Like, as if it's just a totally matter-of-fact, normal thing that nobody would question. And you're just kind of sitting watching like, what? What, in what universe does this make sense? Like, there's just no, yeah, it's just the same exact thing at that wake. It's like, how is this happening? Like,
But
even in the eccentric world of Twin Peaks, like,
yeah.
why do they think this is a normal thing?
I just remember, though, you talking about the feeling like the ending, the episode where Leland dies, and then and they, Cooper, Truman, Albert, and
Yeah, that's another one.
The major there, and this is the moment where they really tip their hand, because Truman says, "Well, if Bob was real, we had him here trapped.
Yeah,
Where's
where
Bob
is he
now?" And it cuts immediately to Cooper.
That's another alternate universe one where it's like suddenly, instead of waiting till the finale and then waiting 25 years,
Right.
Cooper gets possessed in that episode, and that's the last 15
and
episodes.
isn't
like,
that
that's a whole nother, yeah, there's
and that's
so many
why
routes they could have taken.
And that's why I thought that he was possessed, because he was holding Leland. I thought there had been a transfer.
Yes.
And also the next couple episodes, Cooper is acting very alien-like, So
Yes.
it is bizarre. But what's weird is that, so you get that shot of the owl flying, then it freeze frames. And I remember going to high school. I was a freshman in high school when it came out. And I remember going to school, and friends of mine who knew I watched the show came up to me and said, "Is the show over?"
Yeah.
Because it did feel like that was the conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's so disorienting.
I was like, no, it wasn't. And I remember, even at the time, I was 14 years old. Even at the time, being like, when Andrew Packard first came out, and I was like going, what the hell is going on now? This is like the worst show ever. Now I don't care. But when I was 14, at first I was like,
it grows on you.
Yeah, but I mean, for about 5 episodes, I remember watching it going, okay, it's entertaining, it's not, I guess, but it's not Twin Peaks. And then once the Wyndham Earl storyline started ratcheting up, I got so invested. That was, to me, I think that's it got very close to the epicness of the Laura Palmer case if it had been a longer stretch of time.
That's one thing that's really interesting is, because obviously I didn't watch it at the time. When I went back and looked at the alt TV Twin Peaks stuff, it was like, it was really, and it timed perfectly, because I found that archive and was like exploring it right at the time when I was making the part of my video series about the second half of season 2, which I kind of dismissed initially. When I wrote a guide to the series, I literally skipped those, like all of those episodes, even the Wyndham Earl stuff. I was like, and on to the finale, like I just jumped right there. But reading it was like how, even in the really weak middle episodes, like how people were still talking a lot about it and offering all these theories, like they were really engaged with it. And I feel like when all of the mass audience dropped off, that core group of fans became more, at least from what I could see, they almost became more into it as the second season progressed. Like they became like more invested almost than they had been when it was just Who Killed Laura Palmer.
Because
it became all this other stuff.
Because before it was a murder mystery that dissolved into supernatural territory, but then as it went on, it became about mythology, which is something that all these shows now build upon, right? I mean, Lost did it for 6 seasons.
X-Files, obviously.
Exactly. So the idea of building a world, building a mythology, and doing this White Lodge, Black Lodge. I am not the only person who thought, watching the show, and it's funny because I at the time no one said this to me, but it's funny talking to Twin Peaks fans later on, how many of us thought that the show was building up to almost a Lord of the Rings good versus evil battle.
Yeah. Because they do. They make it so like they bring in like the Air Force, and they have like this portal in the woods, and the time is coming, and Jupiter and Saturn are like they build up this whole like thing.
This white lodge, black lodge, it's going to annihilate your soul. And
yeah.
and then when
which is so funny that there's no white black lodge before episode 17. Like that's another thing. Talking about Garmin Bozia, I didn't realize wasn't in the show. I would say I watched that show 4 or 5 times before it really sunk in. Like I must have known that they don't mention it, but it never really sank in until I read an alt TV, from somebody watching it slowly, week by week when it first came out, saying, gee, the Laura mystery has now become the Lodge show. And I suddenly realized, like, the Lodge thing is a totally different plot from the entire first half of the series. Like, they tie it in at the end really well, but up until that final episode, it's like a whole new, it's like a second series has started about the Lodge lore. And, people go, oh, the Lodge dream in episode 2, but that word is never mentioned until, Major Briggs is sitting around the fire with Cooper. And that, I don't know why, but that just fascinates me to no end. Like,
well, that and also
that was like a total reinvention of the show to bring in the Lodge stuff.
Well, and it's like it's not. I mean, let's be honest here. They weren't thinking about this at the time, but it ties into Truman telling Cooper about there's a darkness in the woods.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's sort of the one thing that they are building off of. That's not just a total reinvention,
right?
But yeah, the idea of like almost like quantifying it in this way of like they're a Lodge, like the whole lore.
And the other thing is that I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no, keep going.
The Catherine, what the hell's her name? Piper Laurie's character, Catherine Packard.
Martell.
Yeah, I was gonna say Treeman, but I don't know what the hell that was about. Anyway, Catherine Packard. No. What's Pete's last name?
Martell. Catherine Martell. Yeah.
Yeah, Catherine Packard. What the hell am I talking about? Well, she is the sister. She is the sister.
Yeah.
No, but she tells that lie to Truman, but I want to believe it about how that she was like whisked away.
There was really an angel, yeah.
There was really an angel that took her to this magical place because that ties into the Robertsons' house and Pearl Lakes.
And I mean, it ties into the Angels and Firewalk with me.
Exactly.
Which seems so random. Like
so do you?
It's one of those things. Like he couldn't have been thinking about that.
I mean, do you think Catherine just made that up just to fool Harry Truman, or do you think that that's what happened?
I mean, the assumption is definitely she made it up because she went into hiding and got the Mr. Tajimura mask, and then parts of it are lies for sure because she says, well, I ran out of tuna and that's why I'm back. But really, she's been back for days in disguise and all of that. But, yeah, I know what you mean. Part of me would like to believe that, that somehow that angel lore sort of is like seated in that moment.
Because she never lets on to Truman that she was Mr. Tajimura.
No, it's like one of those things that's totally dropped, and sort of like Ben owning One-Eyed Jacks and being like a criminal pimp and trafficker. But it's like one of those things that just kind of like, it happened and now we're on to the next thing. But yeah, you're right. Like that's never, there's so much. I'm also looking forward to the Secret Lives of Twin Peaks book. I know people are like, oh, I don't want to read it because I feel like it's going to be exactly what I would want a book to be and exactly what I wouldn't want the TV show to be. And that's not to like insult the book. It's just saying that's exactly the form I would like to find out about all of this in between.
They better not get Cooper out of the lodge in the book.
People keep saying that, and that's a whole nother topic that probably we should address, is like this idea that a lot of people have, and I kind of understand where they're coming from, especially if they watched it back in the day, of like, no, this was just the season 2 cliffhanger. It wasn't meant to be this thing that hangs over our head for 25 years. Like, let's get this out of the way and get on with, like, Cooper and Truman solving mysteries or something. And for me, it's like, no, that's like the core. That's got to be like the heart of the new show because it's so Lynchian. It's like, it's Leland Bob. It's Pete, Fred. It's the Mystery Man. It's Diane and the creature behind. Like, it's all of those things. It's just, it's exactly like what Lynch wants to explore in his work, even if apparently it was, not a Lynch thing. It was like Peyton and Frost, like, hey, wouldn't it be great if he saw himself in the mirror, Like, there's just so much to dig into there, and that, like I said, I think, the show could have ended at episode 14. I think part of the reason that it can continue and that it has this afterlife, even the reason that fans continue to talk about and think about it, if it was just this really solid 14, 15 episode show with that great ending, it would be probably a more consistent work of art. It would be something that would be held up as like a great show. It would be, but I think what gives people something to talk about and hang on to and feel like the story is still open and still ongoing is all the stuff that comes after, and especially how Lynch ties it in at the end. And that last shot of Cooper, smashing the mirror, seeing Bob, that's really it's the perfect culmination of the entire arc of the second half of the show, which is all about Cooper at that point. Plus the mythology, but the mythology kind of amplifies the Cooper story.
But it also changes the nature of the show from being about Laura Palmer and the White Lodge, Black Lodge, to being the actual interpretation of Cooper's innocence to corruption.
You're saying that moment changes it retroactively?
No, I mean like it just, you begin to think, oh, maybe the whole nature of the show was watching Cooper go from a wide-eyed wonder innocent to being cold-hearted and corrupted.
Exactly. Like that's definitely a part of it, and I think that was kind of, for all of the sort of walking away, because I think Mark Frost walked away from the show a little bit too. I don't think it was just David Lynch. For all of that,
but like
I
Fire
think
Walk
he did
with
have. What's that?
No, I'm saying, but like you're talking about Fire Walk with Me, how certain things were just Fire Walk with Me. Fire Walk with Me was where Lynch brought in the notion that Cooper was trapped in the lodge.
Yes, great point.
Up until then, it looked like the doppelganger had just jumped into him.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. The split. We see the split on the show, but we don't get any inclination that there's anything left of Cooper in the lodge.
Right.
And that now what we see is just pure evil, and that's it. That's what Cooper is now.
Right.
Is this shell taken over by Bob, and there's nothing left of him.
Right.
It's like a total defeat. And you're right, the film, and that's another thing I didn't totally realize until looking back on it and hearing other people talk about it. It totally... How would I put this? There's so much in Firewalk. Like when I first saw it, it was basically that's a whole other story. Basically, It's when people talk about Firewalk with Me, and even when we were posting this article recently, where the guy titled my video "The 7 Reasons Twin Peaks is Underrated," Firewalk with Me, and you get a lot of people who are fans saying, "Oh no, it's not," or "It's really not this or that," and it's like almost regardless of what you think about it. The idea, and a lot of times, too, on Twitter and Tumblr and these different things, you get people saying, should I see Firewalk with Me? Someone going, no, don't see it. It's a waste of time. It ruins blah, blah, blah. The thing is, whatever you think of it in terms of quality, it's like more than 50% of the Twin Peaks mythology is like in that movie. When you really think about it, there is so much stuff in that film that's never mentioned anywhere on the series, and yet people talk about now, And I think if you add the finale to it...
Let me give an example. Something that the whole Blu-ray box was based around, the Blue Rose.
Exactly, yeah.
That is only mentioned in the movie for about 10 seconds total, and yet it's got a prominent spot on the Blu-ray box.
No, I mean, that's the same thing. The ring's barely in it, but the little man being the arm, it's like a few lines, but it's all these little details, almost just like, it's like when you drop something into water and it just expands rapidly. Like, that's basically what all those things are. They're these little ideas, these little seeds that have kind of, defined the whole Twin Peaks mythology for years afterward. And I think when you throw the finale in there too, and all the stuff that was brought in with that, the doppelgangers, the Red Room being the Black Lodge, which was not, like, we would have basically, I think there was one glimpse of the Red Room in that script. Like, the Red Room would have just been Cooper's dream, more or less.
Right.
Like, that would have been what it was. But now it's something totally different. So I think people forget that in the final, it's a 32-hour series, and you add the film. So, like, say 34 hours
Right.
of material. It's pretty much the last 3 hours that contain, like, so much of the stuff that they can build on going forward in terms of mythology. And until then, I think they do a really sort of good, underrated job of building the concepts. Like Hawk's speech in episode 18, it seems like a total throwaway. But like the Dweller on the Threshold, when you really think about it, it explains not just what happens to Cooper in the finale, but also what happens to Laura in the film. Like, it's the perfect setup, but it's sort of all verbal, and then, you know, Lynch coming back and executing it, just suddenly all these images and these ideas that, you know, that's where it all comes from. So I feel like one thing the new series is going to do to bring it back to that, especially now, you know, we know Carl Rod will be in it, which is exciting, but I think even aside from that, we knew it's really going to bring home to people how it's not just, oh, this first season of the show and then it went wrong. It's like you really have to get into all of Twin Peaks to get that big picture. And I think the new series is going to be rooted in all of that, you know?
I agree. So on that note, I'm going to wrap this one up. But Joel, it's always a pleasure having you on these podcasts with me.
Yeah, same here.
I'm so sorry that today was such a tragic day for us Twin Peaks and David Lynch fans with the passing of Catherine Nicholson. But her memory and performances will live on, and we will definitely miss her in this world of Twin Peaks. And but I'm also really looking forward to the new series and where we go from here. So,
me too.
All right, everybody.
And you know, rest in peace. And it's, I really do feel like somehow the spirit of that character and Catherine Coulson herself is gonna be present and live on in this new series. So she is, you know, like I said many times, soul of Twin Peaks.
I certainly hope so. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time. So take care.